Welcome back. We are talking with State Representative Drew Darby from Austin today. Drew, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to be with folks back home.
We're talking about property tax appraisals tonight, and the appraisals here have been way out of whack. It is a crisis, as the mayor has said. From your perspective, what have you heard? What do you know?
Well, I can tell you I perceive the same crisis that the mayor does. We have lots of folks have reached out to us by telephone, by email, by Facebook connection. Clearly, this is an issue that's motivated a lot of people. It affects a lot of people. It affects everybody in the county. And so people are concerned. They want to reach out to their elected representatives, and when they do, they call me, and they call Judge Carter, and they call the mayor and city council people, and certainly the school board and the school superintendent. But I will tell you this, that there are 150 members of the Texas House on the floor today, and every one of them is fielding the same type of calls from their folks back home. There's not one state representative that I've talked to that has not been inundated with concerned taxpayers back in their home counties that are troubled by the process. They are uncertain about the process. They are questioning the fairness of the process, and they're concerned legitimately as to what their proper response should be. So to answer your question, it is certainly an issue that is weighing on people's minds, and it should be. And but I think that concern should not render folks powerless to do something about it. And I feel certain today we're going to talk about what some of those things are that they can do to protect their property values and protect their homes and investments.
Well, this is a very time-critical issue, and I'm going to bring Joe Hyde in here. But what can you do? What can you do from where you are?
Well, the reality is we talk about issues every day regarding property taxes and the process. The state of Texas does not collect any property taxes, so these are all generated as local revenue to provide local services, whether it be police, fire, roads, certainly schools. All of this, what we're talking about is property tax revenues that support local governmental services. And so the state of Texas does not collect any property taxes. So I can't determine that. All I can do through the legislative process is try to make that process as fair, equitable, uniform throughout the state of Texas. I think people in Tom Green County need to make sure that their properties are being valued with the same tools, appraisal techniques, valuation methodology that people in Tarrant County, Travis County, all counties throughout the state are deploying the same appraisal techniques. My job as a state representative is make sure that the processes are in order and are fair and equitable to govern that process of assessing value for all property here in Texas. And then once that property has been valued, then the next step of the process would be for the local governmental entities to use that certified tax roll in order to assess the rates necessary to raise the revenue associated with their governmental services that the people want and demand.
Representative Darby, how have you been talking to, like, let's say, Representative Brooks Landgraf in Midland, Odessa? I have a reporter on the ground there, and so far he hasn't found any widespread problems like we're experiencing here in Tom Green County over in Midland. Have you heard of it?
Well, I think clearly no two counties are exactly alike, and Tom Green County, let's face it, has gone through a period of time that property values have remained relatively stagnant compared to the rest of the state. And then we've gone through COVID, and we've seen during the COVID process an extraordinary uptick in people wanting to move to rural Texas for their families. And so we were blessed to have a very robust real estate market, and property values increased and sales prices increased during 21 and 22. Right now, we're feeling the effects of an economy that's feeling inflation, that we've seen rising interest rates associated with home buying and owning a home. And so these values that we're seeing are as of January 1 of this year. And they do not reflect what I consider to be here in May of this year, kind of a decline in values because of inflation and high interest rates. But that's the way the law states. These properties here in Narberth County are going to be valued as of January the 1st. Now, with regard to Midland, Odessa, you know, they have a very robust oil and gas driven economy. Their housing remains robust, and a lot of people want to live there and work in the oil field, and so they're not exactly similar to the folks here in Tom Green County. We have a more diverse business model. We depend a lot on agribusiness. We depend upon various manufacturing sectors for our community. And so the two are not at all similar. The fact that they're not seeing perhaps this robust, if you will, increase is not surprising, because no two counties are going to have not gotten to this point in the same method, in the same manner. So I have not talked directly with Brooks about his folks, but I will tell you the people in Bell County. I talked to Representative Shine just a few minutes ago, and they are experiencing the same, if you want, sticker shock associated with these appraisals that are coming out right now. The initial review. Keep in mind, these are the initial appraisal reviews that the chief appraiser is sending out. That is not necessarily the ultimate value. In fact, we're willing to talk about how folks can make sure that their individual properties have an opportunity to be vetted, to be the evidence presented as to why this particular piece of property varies from the appraisal estimate that was issued by the chief appraiser. And then there's a procedure in place for them to appeal that valuation process.
Representative Darby, the mayor talked about, of course, on the elected official side, you can't set the appraised value, but you do have something to do with the tax rate at the city, school district, county level here in Tom Green County. Talk to the folks out there and tell them about some of the protections that the state legislature has already put into law that would prevent this tax rate from creeping up too quickly.
Well, thank you for the question, Joe. And as you know, the legislature has put several safeguards in place trying to check this appraisal issue. First of all, there's a 10% cap that we put in, saying that these are for residential properties that cannot go up more than 10% for tax purposes in any 1 year.
So
they can go up.
You're talking about the homestead exemption if you own a residential property. If you're renting a residential property, you don't have the homestead exemption.
Well, renters don't get to claim a homestead exemption, but if you're an owner and you live that, it's your primary residence, you can claim an exemption. And you should, the first thing the viewers should check is to make sure if they're eligible for a homestead exemption that the property is actually being claimed as such and is entitled to that exemption, and it's reflected on the appraisal district's records. Make sure that if you're over 65 or become 65 in this tax year, that also is noted on the valuation statement with the appraisal district. Whatever exemption you're entitled to, you need to make sure that the appraisal district has a note of that exemption and they're giving you that credit. What I'm referring to on the 10% is the fact that the appraisal cannot go up more than 10% in any one year for tax purposes. Now, if some people are seeing perhaps a 20% rise in their appraisal, for tax purposes, their homestead cannot go up more than 10%. That is a restriction that the legislature has put in. The legislature has also put in protections about how local governmental entities, how much they can go up in any one year. And we put caps in that. And we've said that counties cannot go up more than 3.5%. That is a cap. They cannot raise their revenue more than 3.5% without getting voter approval of that rate. And so we put the same cap rate for cities, and schools have, I think, a 2.5% cap rate. So we are trying to limit the rate in which taxing entities can raise their rates in any one year to provide those necessary services. So the legislature is trying to do everything we can to, in effect, keep those tax rates from going up dramatically in any one year. We've also been able to put more money into schools. And so we bought down and compressed the school tax rate. Certainly over the last biennium, and we anticipate another $15 to $17 billion that we'll put into buying down the tax rates for schools here in Texas. Taxpayers should see a dramatic decrease in the property tax rate for schools in this coming budget year because we're buying those down with the surpluses that the state has.
So Representative Darby, on this obviously if most people in San Angelo are in the San Angelo ISD, that's the biggest chunk of your property tax assessment. Right now, I mean, I was looking back at the history. Back in 2018, the school tax was about $123, $122 per $100, so $1.22 per $100 valuation. Today, it's 97 cents. What do you think what are you looking at if you had a crystal ball? What could you expect it to go down? 10 cents, 20 cents?
I think somewhere around 12 cents, 12 to 15 cents would be my estimation on the amount that we're going to compress those school taxes. I'm not seeing the individual returns for SISD, but with the amount of money that we're putting in, I would anticipate those rates actually going down even further, another 10 to 12 cents per 100.
So we're at 97 cents in 2023, probably in 2024, which is the next time we pay taxes, we could see 85 cents or maybe 83 cents on the school tax.
Correct. And there's several different plans associated with that. I don't know if you're going to get the full benefit of the 12 cents in the initial year. It may be over the biennium, you'll achieve the same 12-cent reduction. But it'll be significant this year that they'll be reduced, and there'll be another significant compression in the next budget year.
So that is a work in progress, I would say, right? What
we
would
have
you
a
do
house
if you were a
plan.
school board member and you only had to tax people at 83 cents?
That would have been a dream back in 2005, 2004. The House plan, Drew, right now includes an increase in the homestead exemption up to $70,000, maybe even $100,000. Is that right? Is that what they're talking about?
Well, I think you're speaking of the Senate plan. The Senate plan has stressed increasing the exemptions, homestead exemption, I believe, to $75,000 for a residential homestead. For disabled over 65, increasing those exemptions, and compression of school taxes certainly. But the House plan looks more at the appraisal increases. I think the current House plan calls for a 5% cap on residential homestead. and a 5% cap on commercial property. Right now, there are no limits on increases for commercial property. The House is reacting to this type of concern from the taxpayers of Texas and saying we need to focus on appraisals and appraisal creep. Clearly, this conversation today is focused on that also. Right. So the House has chosen to say, let's limit those appraisals to 5% for residential and 5% for commercial. Somewhere between the House proposal and somewhere between the Senate proposal, I feel confident we'll arrive at a satisfactory negotiated settlement, and there'll be some combination of increasing a homestead exemption and some restriction on appraisals, probably just for residential, and perhaps drop the appraisal limit on commercial. So I don't know where those negotiations are right now, but I will tell you that will be worked out in the next 2 weeks. We will sine die on the 29th, and I feel comfortable that the legislature, both the Texas House and the Texas Senate, want to arrive at a negotiated settlement here and deliver the promised tax relief that we all have worked so hard to achieve in this legislative session. Texas has been blessed with economic prosperity, and we have a surplus that should and will a lot of it go back to the taxpayers and fix some of the systemic problems that exist in our economy today.
I'm going to ask a question that's a little bit connected, but not totally. You were criticized earlier this session for coming out as a rural legislator against the school voucher plan, and I know that's a very high priority item for the governor. Kind of explain to the people your vision on these school vouchers. Now, before you do, I'm going to tell you we just got through talking to the CFO of San Angelo ISD, and he gave us a little bit of a rundown on the financial impact on the San Angelo ISD of a voucher program. But I just wanted to hear, I think the people want to hear what your ideas were on the school voucher.
Well, thank you for asking that question. It has certainly been at the forefront of our legislative concerns. I've been a strong proponent of public education since I first ran back in 2006. I'm a product of public schools. My kids have gone to public schools. My grandkids are going to public schools. I support them and support what they do. And I want to increase the resources available for them. So a lot of chatter has been developed by some of our statewide leaders that say we need more school choice. Well, we have school choice. We have school choice in Tom County. If a parent wants to send their kid to public schools, they can. They can go to SAISD, Wall, Christoval, Gray Creek. They can go to any public school. They can also go to a public charter school. TLC is one of those. We have one of the very, very much needed and very worthwhile public charter school we have in Tom County. We also have good private schools. Cornerstone Christian is a wonderful school. Ambleside, Trinity Lutheran, Angelo Catholic. All of those are choices that parents can make on behalf of their children. Now, the reason why they have those choices is they may feel that environment for the education of their kids is better suited at one of those institutions I said. And also, I forgot to mention, they have the ability to homeschool their children. So that is choice. And so don't be diverted and confused about the the messaging going on right now that we need more parental choice. We have parental choice. What this debate is about is taking public funds and diverting them to private or parochial schools without accountability, without testing achievement, and putting that in the hands of folks that do not have or practice open enrollment policies. Private schools have the ability to decide which students come to their school or not. They can either choose to admit them or they can refuse to admit them. They are not held accountable for that decision. public schools have to take all of the children. If they want to come, special needs kids, kids with learning disabilities, if they want to go to a public schools have to admit them. If those same students want to go to a private or parochial schools, they don't have the same open enrollment policy. They don't have the same non-discriminatory policy. Now, they will take our money, but I've had a lot of these schools tell me they don't want the strings attached to it. And that's what we're talking about.
Well, Representative Darby, I think you said a very important thing there. I want to stress it, that it's just like in elementary schools, and you see it here even in Tom Green County, the quality of the school and the student body is determined by the parents, how active the parents are, for example. So if you take all the active parents and have them put all their kids into one private school, then we're depriving a lot of schools and a lot of locations in our community of, I would say, an active PTA kind of thing. And at the same time, like you said, I mean, if you're gonna make the public school, the San Angelo ISD, take on all the special needs children and things like that, then all of a sudden there's going to be a quality disparity between the two, and we no longer have a universal education, and that's what I kind of see with that.
That is a treasure that this state has enjoyed since its founding. One of the reasons listed in the Texas Declaration of Independence is the failure of the Mexican government to provide for a free education for their children, for the children of Texans. And so I consider that to be my primary obligation in serving as the state representative, is representing everybody, of course, in my district, but certainly public education and our efforts to educate all of the students. Children from more affluent families, children from, as you said so aptly, children from families who care and are involved with their students' education, who care to go to their PTA meetings and go to their soccer games and support them at their plays. I mean, those students are going to survive and do well because they have parental involvement, and the parents care about getting them there, and care about making sure they attend those classes. That's not always the case, and so public schools remains a repository for everybody, and we need to make sure they have the resources that they need in order to deal with all of those students. I think that is the very lifeblood of our communities, especially in rural Texas. There's not a whole lot
not having wall hawks. The wall hawks.
I can't imagine that. I cannot imagine not having the ability of our schools to be at the forefront of our identity of our cities. If you take away Wall School District, you take away the very fabric of Wall itself. Same way with Robert Lee or Braun or Winters or Ballinger. These schools are the very identity of our communities, and if those schools go away, then our communities go away, and that's the challenge. Don't be confused about the rhetoric of choice. This is not about choice. Texans and Texas parents have choice. This is about public dollars flowing to private or parochial pockets. And that's what this is about. People, the money is nice, but I will tell you that when I've done research on private or parochial schools throughout the state of Texas, the amount that's being bandied around as a quote voucher only covers a portion of that cost. And if it does cover part of the tuition, it does not cover any transportation that it would take to get that student to that classroom. So I don't know why the governor is so invested in this. It hurts rural Texas. I took an oath to represent my district, and I will stand up no matter how long it takes to protecting my public schools. and public education here in Texas. So I would anticipate that if I'm to follow the governor's latest signals, we'll probably spend some quality time together later this summer or the fall talking about it. But no amount of talk is going to change my position on that.
Probably a special session on the way. I want to wrap this up, Drew, one more time. You have constituents here and in other counties, as you've said, that are beside themselves about their appraisals. And, democracy's hard, it's messy, it's tough, and the system is made that way. But when the dust settles at the end, it's because we're participating. What, again, to close this out, what do you recommend those people with those appraisals in their hands, what do they do about this bill right now?
Okay. Well, what we need to do, I want to make this perfectly clear to the viewing audience. When you get your appraisal notice, it should come with a pamphlet describing your rights and remedies. That should be included with your notice. You have 30 days from that notice, the date of that notice, to file a protest. I urge everyone that disagrees with their value shown by the initial appraisal, if you disagree with that, then you need to file a protest. You can either do so either online or in writing. I would urge everyone to do that. Now, I would also request a package, if you will, from the CAD, which is the Central Appraisal District. You need to ask them for all evidence that they have in which they valued your appraisal. For example, if they have comparable pieces of property to your property that they're using to judge your value, then you need to be provided with copies of those properties. They have to provide that to you at least 14 days before the hearing on your particular case. Make sure you do that. There is a card, if you will, that the appraisal district has on your property, and on that card it has particular facts about your property itself, such as the number of buildings on your property, the square footage of those buildings, the date in which they were constructed, relevant information about the category of that property. And so you need to get a copy of that and make sure everything on that card is correct, that your square footage is correct. Now, once you verify that all that information is correct, then you can start the process of building your case that the appraisal is wrong. And why is it wrong? You have to provide, first of all, let me start back. The burden of proof is on the appraisal district to demonstrate what your property is worth. So they have the burden of proof. And they should present you with comparables which say this is why we arrived at your value. Then it's up to you to refute that and do so with concrete photographs, evidence that your house hasn't been properly maintained. It has a foundation problem. There are cracks in the foundation. You've not redone the inside. The house is in deteriorating condition. Things that would affect the value, you need to be able to document with photographs or proof or an appraisal, if you will, from a third-party appraiser that if you have a recent one that you can bring. If you have recently bought or sold that property, you could bring your closing documents and show them that while they value it X, you only paid Y 6 months ago. All of that is relevant. And you need to build your case on why your individual appraisal is off. And make sure that when they provide that evidence that they're comparing your property with other properties in your neighborhood. It is not satisfactory for a piece of property in Lakeview, Texas, to be judged against property or comparables that are in, for example, Bentwood or in Miles or in Gray Creek. It should be in the neighborhood, Lakeview neighborhood, if that's where you live. So make sure that the comparables are located in close proximity to the property that you're protesting. And so go through that process, meet with the appraisal district, tell them and demonstrate to them why your property should not be valued where it is. And if you can come to an agreement, if it's within the parameters of what you think might be reasonable, then you can stop there. Or if you don't want to accept those values, then you can proceed to the next step, which is appealing that, and you will appeal that either through arbitration, or you will appeal that through a district court proceeding. So you have options available to you. I would encourage you to do so. Now, we've talked about all this time about the value. We're only talking about half of the equation. Once you arrive at a negotiated value, then that's what will be used by the taxing authorities to assess whatever rate they set against that value.
Right.
The process, and stop me if I need to give you a break for a commercial or something.
No, we're good.
But I think this is very important, that the most I consider to be equally as important, or perhaps more so, is the interchange that you as a taxpayer have, and the involvement with the city, county, and state, and not city, county, and school, as they assess their rates. Now, they will hold budget hearings in July and August. I would hope that every taxpayer that's disgruntled about their appraisal will show up at the budget hearings for the city, school, and county, and ask them, with this total assessed valuation in your taxing jurisdiction, what is the amount of revenue that it would take to raise in order to have a no new tax revenue rate, which means we in the legislature have said they have to tell you what that rate is in which they generate the same amount of money.
And Representative Darby, what we're going to do at San Angelo Live is we're going to show what the no new revenue rate is. And then when they start proposing, throwing numbers around, we're going to say this is a percentage over that line, so that it shows what a real tax increase is. Because the entire law that the Texas legislature wrote was truth in taxation, right? So we want to know what the truth is. And but we're running to the end of our time slot. I'm gonna have to let you go right now. But this has been Representative Drew Darby. He's in Austin right now, working on legislation to lower your school taxes right now. And also he owns Surety Title here in San Angelo, so he knows a lot about real estate. So I really appreciate you taking time to talk to our audience today.
It's been my pleasure. It's a serious topic, and a lot of people are concerned, and thank you for allowing me the venue to address the concerns of the folks that live and work in the Concho Valley.
You have a great day, Mr. Darby.
Thank you.